Ben, thank you so much for your patience. Thanks for waiting. Ben, audience, Ben. Ben, everyone has just watched the Snip, and I think they're about to let you know whether or not they enjoyed it or not. Absolutely great. I remember screening the Snip over at Lytham a couple of years back. Watching it again tonight, it is still just as funny as I remember it. I'd love to talk a little bit before we get on to the Snip about you, though, if that's okay, just so people have a little bit of a background. How did you get involved in film?
Good question. I studied film at university. I didn't go to film school. I went to a university in Southampton and was completely disorganised. Went along, my parents were like, you need to, fill out a UCAS form back when it was all paper. I lost the form about 6 or 7 times, and eventually I just applied for a film course and arrived, and it wasn't a practical film course. It was all theory and history and all that kind of stuff. So it was really fun, but I was so disorganised. I didn't get to make a single film the entire time I was studying film at university. So it wasn't until afterwards, and I fell into a completely different career in marketing. And about 10 years after I graduated, a friend of mine encouraged me to enter one of these 48-hour film challenges where you get like a film title and a line of dialogue and a prop, and you go away and make a film over a weekend. So that's how it started, sort of in my probably late 20s. And I just made this film one weekend. It screened at in a Cineworld, and then I was hooked because suddenly I'd made this thing in a really short amount of time, and it was suddenly in a cinema, and it became a very addictive thing to pursue. So that's how it all started, really. Yeah.
Is comedy your forte? The Snip's obviously very funny. The Man That I Wave At as well. It's good sense of humour in that, although it's a little bit more dramatic and darker. Is comedy your thing?
Yeah, absolutely. It took me a while to get around to comedy being my thing. I think I started off doing sort of sketches that were just daft with friends, and then I had this. I think a lot of filmmakers go through it. They sort of think, well, they want to be taken seriously, right? And they want to, and what film's going to win a BAFTA, and what film's going to win an Oscar, and what film's going to get you a Biffa, and all that kind of stuff. And so I had a period where I was making films that were very dramatic, and it was like human trafficking and domestic abuse, and they were perfectly fine films, and I learned a lot doing them, but I wasn't having fun. And my wife said to me, just go back to making comedy because that's the only time you're having any fun with filmmaking. So I kind of fell back into it and really started making things just for me. And I think that's when I started to make things that were engaging and other people were finding interesting and funny as well. But for me, that's comedy for sure. Yeah.
Have you got any specific influences in the comedy world that made you go down the path that you've done?
Well, I mean, I always, I grew up in a funny household, and everyone was cracking jokes, and that was it. I grew up watching like all the Naked Gun movies and all the Police Academy movies, and we were always just watching stuff that was, largely family orientated, but just comedy. So I'd say that just from a young age, I was exposed to comedy as the main thing that we would watch. But then more modern examples, films that I love now are films like, Eagle versus Shark. So Taika Waititi's first feature is absolutely brilliant. Napoleon Dynamite, those kind of films, just with oddballs and weirdos and kind of misfits. They're the kind of films that I love watching and try and not emulate, but they're the things that I most engage with. So the things that I write mostly about, I think.
You mentioned briefly about not worrying too much about things like BAFTA or Biffa, just wanting to make content. But of course, you are no stranger to BAFTA, are you? You want to tell us a little bit?
I mean, yes, but are you talking about the Rowcliffe? Yeah, I won a writing competition 2 or 3 years ago now called BAFTA Rowcliffe, which was great. It got me kind of representation, and it got me lots of really good industry meetings. A lot of the festivals we get in now with the Snip and with the Man That I Wave At, and even the ones before that were all qualified as for BAFTAs and BIFTAs. But it's interesting because I think the mindset is that I was trying so desperately to get that kind of acknowledgement, but it wasn't until I stopped trying to do that and just made films that I thought I would like watching and made them instead. That's when kind of BIFTAs and BAFTAs, qualifying festivals at least, were the ones that were picking up my work. So I think it shows. I think people can tell when a filmmaker puts a little piece of themselves in their work, as opposed to them maybe just trying to reverse engineer something that they think is the kind of thing that those kind of organisations would be interested in.
So let's talk a little bit about the Snip. Where did the concept for that come from? Where was its evolution?
Oh God, this is shameful, isn't it? Because it's very much based on my own experiences to an extent, I would say. It got to a point where my wife and I did not want to continue our family, and I just we discussed the options as they do in the film, and the idea of me getting a vasectomy became it made me uncomfortable. Actually, it made me very uncomfortable, and I didn't realise that until about a week later, after I'd sort of agreed to it, and I just kind of dug a little bit deeper and thought, well, why does it make me uncomfortable? What is it about this, really simple, perfectly normal procedure that kind of makes me sort of wince a little bit, and I spoke to friends and a lot of my male friends kind of felt the same, and it was just ridiculous. It was all kind of entrenched in this concept of masculinity and what it is to be a man, and it really, it became so absurd, the conversations I was having, and the amount of people that were recoiling just at the idea of it, just made me think, this is ridiculous, and I'm ridiculous, and isn't this funny? And I was able to take that and kind of push it a lot more into comedy, and make the lead character hopefully a lot more ridiculous than I am in real life, and see how far I could push it. And of course, screening the film, the biggest reaction I got were from male members of the audience who were like, "Oh, I could never do that. I could never." And it's just ridiculous, isn't it? The whole thing, but it exists, and I think that's why it's when it was on its festival journey, it did really well, because people were engaging with it in a way that felt quite empathetic, and yeah, so that's it really, yeah.
We always have quite a few filmmakers who join us at these events. Let's talk about your cast, because everyone writes good stories, or at least I hope they do. You certainly do. You're winning awards for it. You've got some wonderfully recognisable members of talent in that film. All of them do an absolutely stellar job. I think probably the question that a lot of filmmakers will have on the edge of their lips is, how did you get them?
Yes, good question. So I would say that the two most, what I've learned along the way, the two most important things from any project is a script and the cast and the casting, because they can really make or break, the right cast will really elevate the script to make it even better than you could have imagined that it would be, and that was certainly the case with this. So one of my long-term collaborators is Rebecca Shorrocks, who's the wife in this movie, and she's in 3 or 4 of my other films as well, because she's brilliant. And she was part of a double act on the comedy circuit, and the comedy world is very small. It's everyone knows everyone, and so with this film, she knew Kieran, and she got me in contact with him, and because it was someone that I really liked, and she was like, "Oh, I know him, so great." So we sort of, we were able just to make that connection, and then Sunil, a friend of mine called Benjamin Sutton, who's a great comedy writer, director, and producer, has worked with Sunil quite a few times. So I just asked if I could reach out and get his email address, and luckily he read it and was like, yeah, okay, I'm up for that. I'll do it for a few days, no problem at all.
Yeah, of all places for Wi-Fi to go wrong, it has to be in a cinema.
How did you come to the decision to have the procedure done today?
Well, we had a child. They're fantastic. Really lovely, sweet kid. So we decided to have more, but the second one turned out to be a bit of a prick.
Both agreed that we didn't want any unplanned pregnancies.
Pregnancies.
And afterwards, will I enjoy watching football? It's just my mate Nigel had his dog done and it completely changed his personality. Like, he used to bark at the postman and now he's scared of cats. I'll take you home, You don't think I'm a prick, do you?
Well, we shall have a technical discussion with Arc Cinema and see if we can't make sure in the future this goes a little bit more to plan. I hope you'll be back. I hope you join us next month when we'll have some more international films to be able to screen for you guys. And we'll start opening up some of the selections to the audience as well at some point so that you guys can start making some decisions about the sort of content that you might like to see at these events and put on the screens, whether that's shorts or feature films. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, do please come back. And if you're hungry for more than just an hour and a half, Lytham International Film Festival, which is our flagship event, it's been running for 4 years, is coming up at the beginning of September. If you're interested in that and seeing more films like this from around the world and local filmmakers as well, it's 4 days in Lytham St Anne's over the first weekend, so Thursday to Sunday in September. Check us out, check it out on the internet, Lytham International Film Festival. Give it a little look, it's on social media as well.
Wherever you are going next, enjoy the rest of your night, and hopefully we see you back here next month for another Firestorm Presents, hopefully with a much longer Q&A.
Thanks everybody, good night.